What should we as believers make of Obamacare? The Supreme Court's decision to uphold the individual mandate portion of the law drew no shortage of praise and outrage from the masses. We need to be careful that we don't confuse our politics with our faith. That's not to say that we can't use our faith in the political arena, but rather we must distinguish between how we act according to our politics and how we act according to our faith. There are some provisions of the law that we as Christians should protest on the basis of our faith. The authorization for on-demand abortion and the assertion of reproductive rights over religious freedoms are two that come immediately to mind. One feature that should not have the cause of Christ invoked as grounds for opposition is the individual mandate, the stipulation that requires each individual to have his or her own health insurance policy. While the consequences of this are extremely distasteful in a political sense, we have no directive from Scripture to object to this particular decree. How then should we react? For some, civil disobedience comes to mind, but we need to be aware that we cannot claim immunity from punishment based on our faith, even when the matter objected to is a moral one. Both Peter and Paul make this clear. Romans 13:5 records, "Therefore it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake." Peter told his readers in his first letter, "Submit yourself to the Lord's sake for every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority or to his governor." And later on, "For what credit is there if when you sin and are harshly treated, you endure it with patience? But if when you do what is right and suffer for it, you patiently endure it, this finds favor with God." Peter knew this firsthand, and he and John practiced civil disobedience. Paul too understood this, and they accepted the punishment of the rulers gladly. In the modern era, Dr. Martin Luther King also understood this in his campaign for civil rights. In short, what Scripture would tell us is that while we do have a free agency to make a decision to either accept or reject the direction of our government, in either case, that freedom requires responsibility to answer for our actions. We seem to have forgotten that, rhetoric aside, Peter and Paul lived under a government that was way more restrictive than ours, and that does not negate their advice. One may ask that since we live in a more liberal culture, shouldn't we defend our freedoms? Yes, and the way we should do it is through our allegiance to God, not through inordinate preoccupation with political process. The Jewish people asked if it was lawful to pay the tax using the coin bearing Caesar's image. The court has ruled that the individual mandate is in essence a tax. Jesus told his listeners, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's." It appears that in America, Christians are finding themselves in the same position. We must use peaceful means and our allegiance to God to change our culture, not inordinate political maneuvering. All of our government's positions on these are subject to change at any moment. It appears they may even become more objectionable. One thing that doesn't change is God. The saints of old knew this, and they clung to it. And if today we cling to it as well and witness to it, we may end up breaking some laws, but we will be doing it for the right reasons. This has been Food for Thought. I'm Ray Diamond.